Daily Devotion with Pastor Balla for December 30th, 2021 from Psalm 119, verses 161 to 168. Psalm 119 is an acrostic poem, which uses the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Each letter is given a section, so that means there are 22 sections, and each section has 8 verses. And each verse begins with the same Hebrew letter. We don't realize this because the Hebrew gets translated into English. But let's continue with Psalm 119, starting with verse 161. Princes persecute me without cause, but my heart stands in awe of your words. The first part of this verse is so true today. Princes, that is, the government, do impose restrictions upon believers. In the United States here, of course, we do have many freedoms in the church, and at the moment, we enjoy those freedoms. But in other parts of the world, it is much of a different story. So what would you say to those Christians who are living in a country where they cannot openly worship God? As this verse says, my heart stands in all your words. We are to encourage Christians throughout the world to continue to hang on to the promises of God through God's holy word, even in the midst of many persecutions. And the next verse tells us why. Verse 162, I rejoice at your word like one who finds great spoil. As Christians, we realize there is a great spoil. That is a great deal of riches, a great treasure that comes from God's holy word. So we rejoice because we have this treasure, even if we live in a country where we are indeed suffering great persecution for the Christian faith. Verse 163, I hate and abhor falsehood, but I love your law. This verse again compares and contrasts the idea of false ideas from the world versus the pure and true ideas of God's holy word. And so we put our faith and trust, and our joy comes from God's holy word. Verse 164, 7 times a day I praise you for your righteous rules. 7 times a day. Does this mean that the psalmist was praying 7 times a day? Maybe, maybe not. 7 is one of those numbers used for completion. So maybe this verse was meant to say, all day long I praise you for your righteous rules, that is, your holy word. Verse 165, great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble. Here is an acknowledgement of peace that only comes from God and his holy word. The world around us will never know this true peace as long as it continues to be separated from God. That peace is a positive benefit because it means that nothing can make us stumble. The world cannot take our faith away. So the world tries to convince us to give up the Christian faith. So we especially need Psalm 119 to remind us of God's faithfulness as the world is continuing trying to pull us away from God's holy word. Verse 166, I hope for your salvation, O Lord, and I do your commandments. Yes, as Christians, we realize that Jesus is the Christ and our only Savior, and he is our only hope. Verse 167, my soul keeps your testimonies. I love them exceedingly. My soul loves God's holy word because in God's holy word is our strength for our daily life. Verse 168, I keep your precepts and testimonies, for all my ways are before you. The last part of this section, "All my ways are before you," is a beautiful reminder that God knows all. He knows what goes on in our heart. He knows what goes on in our mind. And the best part of it all, He still loves us. He still forgives us. Even though He knows how many times I've screwed up and made mistakes, and God still restores us. God's peace and many blessings be with you. And thank you for listening. And please take an opportunity to share this message with others. If you have enjoyed these daily devotions, please consider making a donation to Peace Lutheran Church, 24024 West Main Street, Plainfield, Illinois, 60544. Thank you again for listening.